Whatever happened to 3D movies? Is that just me? I don't know. I feel like they just disappeared. I remember when I was a kid, last year, and an Avatar came out in 3D, and you could go and you could see all the blue people just coming out at you in 3D, and I thought that was so incredible. And let's not forget the forgotten masterpiece that is Spy Kids 3D. For those millennials out there, you got Antonio Banderas in 3 dimensions. It's awesome. But as a kid, I loved to take the 3D glasses home because they were weird glasses, if you recall, right? Because one side would be all blue and one side would be all red, and you could kind of cover up or close one eye and you could look out and everything would all be blue, or you could do the opposite and everything would all be red, and it was only when you looked through both eyes that you saw things in 3D, right? It was a simpler time, of course. But today, what's happening in our gospel, what the feast that we're celebrating, is we are seeing with only one half of our 3D glasses. We're either covering up one eye and seeing everything blue, or covering up one eye and seeing everything red. We're only seeing really half of the picture. So what do I mean by that? In the Gospel of Matthew, which we read our gospel from today, there are really interesting parallels between the scene of the transfiguration and the scene of the crucifixion. And something that I was thinking about this week is that perhaps we, as the reader of Matthew's gospel, are meant not to see just one moment or just the other, like blue or red, but we're meant to put them together as one and see the mystery in all of its dimensions and see it in its fullest reality. So, for example, today on the Transfiguration, Jesus is on Mount Tabor, right? And then at the crucifixion, he's also on a mountaintop. He's on Mount Calvary. It's on Mount Tabor that he is flanked on either side, right, by 2 of the greatest figures in the Jewish faith, by Moses and Elijah. It's on Mount Calvary that he's flanked, one on each side, by 2 robbers, right? The most disgraceful people for the Jewish culture, those who were being crucified by their Roman overlords. This morning, our Lord is crowned with rays of light, right, that are literally coming off of his face. On Good Friday, he's crowned with thorns. This morning, he is clothed, as it notes, in radiant white garments. On Good Friday, of course, right, he is stripped of all of his garments, and it's the soldiers at the foot of the cross who are playing dice to determine who gets his garment to bring it home. It's on this day that Jesus is revealed really as the true and eternal and the perfect temple, right? There's this cloud that descends upon the mountaintop, just like the cloud that descended upon the temple in Jerusalem when Solomon finally finished it and consecrated it. And just like the cloud that descended upon the tent of meeting in the wilderness, that like primitive kind of portable temple that Moses built, right, that God could dwell with his people. And so it's for this reason that Peter brings up what he does about tents, right, building a tent for each of the 3 persons. He's not going camping. He recognizes that what's happening here is the definitive temple, right, that what the tent and what the temple prefigured is here in Jesus Christ. I think it's for this reason that on Good Friday, when they are taunting Jesus on the cross in Matthew's gospel, they taunt him by talking about the temple. They say, "You would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Come down from the cross." And it's just when, right, the side of Jesus, that true temple, his side is pierced and blood and water flows out. It's at that moment, of course, that the side, the veil of the temple, is torn in 2, and it's opened up as well. It's this morning that God the Father looks down upon Jesus Christ and says, "This is my beloved Son, right, in whom I am well pleased. This is my Son." And it's on Good Friday that the centurion, the soldier, looks up at Jesus and says, "Truly this was the Son of God," right? At both moments, either someone's looking down or looking up and affirming the sonship of Christ. This morning, there's a radiant cloud that casts a shadow over the mountaintop where they are. And it's Matthew who notes that on Good Friday, there is darkness that covers the earth from noon until 3. Finally, when the disciples are on the ground, Jesus has to touch them, right? He pokes them and he says, "Rise and do not be afraid." That word in Greek he uses for rise is the same word used for resurrection. That he's tapping them on the shoulders and he's saying, resurrect, get up. And it's really after Good Friday that God the Father, right, goes to Jesus laying in the earth, laying on the ground in the tomb, and touches him, right, and says, rise, do not be afraid. I think it's for this reason that at the end of our gospel today, Jesus tells these three disciples not to tell this vision to anyone until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. Right? It's not until after Good Friday that they've seen both the red and the blue, and they can put it together, that they are to tell others what they have seen. Right? So what we're seeing today on the Transfiguration is only one half of the vision. We're seeing everything all glory. We're seeing everything all red. And on Good Friday, we're seeing everything all agony and suffering and death, divinity, humanity, right? Blue and red. But what we're meant to do is not to squint with one eye or the other, but to see the reality as it is, to see the two parts put together as St. Matthew writes them in his gospel. So what does this tell us? What's the point of kind of thinking in this way? I think one of the provocative ideas that St. Matthew has and that he's trying to tell us is that Jesus' glory and Jesus' suffering and death and passion are the same thing, but viewed in two ways. That for Jesus Christ to hand himself over out of love on the cross is his glory. It is the moment where he manifests most fully who he is, and where the Father looks down upon him with the most joy. And even in silence on Good Friday, right? When could the Father more truly say, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased"? So often in life, we only see with one side of the glasses, right? Either it feels like everything's going our way, things are going great, the Lord is so close, right? We're really walking in our spiritual life, and it's easy, and it's sweet, and it's working out well, and we think, man, why don't I should be a great Christian all the time. Like, this is easy, right? Or, right, we're in the darkness, and it's a struggle, and we're confused, and we feel abandoned by God, right? We either feel like we're living or we're seeing out of the blue, or we're seeing out of the red. And I think an important spiritual principle is to always strive, therefore, to see in 3D. St. Ignatius of Loyola, whose feast day we celebrated on Monday, gives us really great kind of spiritual principle in his spiritual exercises. He says that when I recognize which state I am in, if I am in consolation, everything's going great, I'm feeling great, feeling super close to God, or whether I am in desolation, I feel abandoned, I feel dark, I feel heavy and sad, whatever state I'm in, I want to recall the contrary state. If I'm seeing red, I want to recall blue. If I'm seeing blue, I want to recall red, so that I can have the proper disposition of heart, right? If I am in desolation, if it's a struggle, the first thing I want to do is to stop and remember the Lord's graces and blessings of the past. I want to go back to that place where I most clearly recall God's presence and love and care with me here and now. And in that desolation, I want to live and return to that moment, right? I want to be more aware of our Lord's presence and love, even in that darkness. So I want to push back towards that consolation. If I am in consolation, I want to push in the other way. I want to recognize that even if things feel great and easy and wonderful now, I know they won't always feel that way. And so I want to prepare in the moment of consolation for the upcoming desolation. I want to be extremely attentive and receptive and present to the Lord in this moment. I want to receive his love so clearly and fully that when I am in desolation in the future, I can return to this. Right? So the goal is that in whatever state I'm in, if I'm at the Transfiguration and everything's glory, if I'm at Good Friday and everything is agony, I want to recall to see in 3D. That way, at every moment, whether I am happy or sad, far or close to him, consoled or desolate, I see the Lord, and I see him as he is, and as he shows himself to me. Right? And seeing him, I might love him, and loving him, I might follow him, and following him, I might be with him forever. Right? So this morning, as we celebrate our Lord in glory, as he shows us his great divinity, as he strengthens us for the scandal of the cross and of suffering and of death, let us strengthen our hearts. Let us draw close to this altar and really become receptive and aware and attuned to our Lord's love and care for us this day, so that strengthened by his love and his glory and his power, we might follow him and see him forever.